Hey everybody, it's Heiden, and I'm back at it again with another campaign. I know you're real excited, huh? Um, the last month was really something where I basically went from 2 campaigns to none, and I know that a lot of you are probably not very happy with me about that, and for good reason. I understand it. Like there was no finality to that, right? The Macho campaign ended soon. I wanted it to keep going, and then I handed over the Goodbye campaign, and then now I had nothing. But after several weeks of searching for an opponent and coming up with some new ideas and new strategies, I've got a new campaign started here with somebody I've never played before. An interesting pick, and we'll talk about how he was chosen. But let's go ahead and get into who this guy is. So my opponent is named Italian. He's an Italian young man from Italy, but he lives in the UK, as I understand. I think he's got about 3 play-by-email campaigns. Track record's undetermined because he's very young. I don't think he's ever seen one to the end, and neither have I, honestly. He's been on my Discord for years, and he was actually chosen by a community poll. I put it in my Discord, and people voted for him. They wanted to give this young man a chance. And then, obviously, you guys know me. If you're here, you've been on my channel for a long time, I'm sure. I'm 40 from Southern California. I've got 5 campaigns now, 3 Japan, 2 Allied. I've got 3 wins, 1 loss, and 1 incomplete. That's the Goodbye campaign. I handed that over to my friend ML, and he's playing that now. And honestly, it was probably good that I got out of it when I did, because it's not going well for him, and it's not really his fault. I didn't make great choices in that campaign. But speaking of choices, let's talk about the house rules for this one. So some of these are similar to what I played before. So the first one is no 4-engine bombers operating below 10,000 feet for naval and industry attacks. But there's no restriction for like ground attacks. Float planes are exempted. Interesting. That's what Italian compromised on, because I wanted something, a blanket thing. And he said, well, how about for naval and industry? But like if I want a ground attack below that, I should be allowed to. And I agreed. No night bombing with moonlight below 85%. I needed this back because Goodbye was making my life a living hell with this night bombing, and it's just so overdone in this game, and it's hard to. I don't like night bombing. You've heard me rail on this before. So it's back with the moonlight of 85% restriction, and that's what I had with the Macho campaign. No full speed off map movement for allied ships and task forces. That's similar to the Goodbye campaign. It's an exploit. I don't know if it's working as intended or a bug or oversight, but I don't like it, and he's not going to do it. No custom air orders for allies on turn 1. All stock, no edits. That's standard for most of these things. No new task forces created for allies on turn 1. Only issue orders, disband pre-existing turn 1 task forces. Okay, that's standard for most campaigns. No ground orders of any sort to allied unit on turn 1 except for China troops and China AOR. That's pretty standard. And this is the rule that I like to introduce, so you don't do the fake cap trap, avoid the sweep thing with your training squadrons. No fighter training within 15 hexes of enemy airfields capable of launching strikes, so airfield size greater than 1. Only Glen float planes on Japanese float plane carrier subs. I like that. I'm Japan, but I don't like the idea of putting float planes that can't physically fit on a Japanese sub like a Jake. Like the Glens are the ones that need to go on there. Variable reinforcements plus or minus 15 days, pretty standard. Okay, now here's something that I had to compromise on, because Italian was not a big fan of the Kwantung Unleashed. So restricted units must play political points across borders. So, example, the Kwantung Army I had to buy it out for it to go into China. Now, on the flip side, the Chinese can't go into Burma and India without paying political points. The USA can't rail down to Cape Town, which is physically impossible to rail there anyway, but in the game you can, without paying political points. So it's restricted to both of us. He wanted me to pay full price, and I'm like, sorry, bro, that's not happening, because I'm not going to do that. But I'll meet you in the middle where there's a way that you can, and I've got a tutorial video out on this, how you can pay political points and change the headquarters. And in some cases, you can only pay 1/4 of the cost. Again, if you want to know how to do that, check my tutorial on political points. And here's the last thing, and this is a big one, and I've never played this way before, and I'm a little apprehensive about it. Stacking limits for ground combat. I'm going to actually show you in the game exactly what that is and what that means here in just a little bit, because it is definitely something new. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you won't. It completely changes the dynamic of the ground campaign. So there's your house rules. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and fade into the game, and we're going to talk about, you know, the scenario and stacking limits and all that stuff. Okay, here we go. We're looking at the map. So this campaign is going to be on my updated scenario 1.5 on version 2.6b. This is probably going to be the last campaign I ever play on version 2.6b, because the writing's on the wall that everybody's really looking to move on to the newer versions of the game. Italian didn't even understand why I'm still playing this. I don't like 2.8b. I'm not ready for it. It changes a lot of mechanics of the game that I'm not a big fan of. But, times are changing and I need to move on from this. So this will probably be the last one. And my scenario is similar to what I played against GIGABYTE, but it's updated from lessons learned from that campaign. So here's the changelog. Some of the stuff that I fixed was, and this is a big one, I think, the A6M0 upgrade path. We'll discuss it. I've given some flight training squadrons to the Japanese to make up for the lack of off-map training. Moved up some destroyer arrival dates into 42 just to help them out a little bit with that. I made some adjustments to some Japanese squadrons. I think I added a little bit more float planes and things like that. And I changed some upgrade paths of some aircraft so that you can combine fragments better. And I added a few permanently restricted engineers to the Japanese home islands so they could do some base upgrades and stuff like that. Probably one of the biggest changes I've made to this version of the campaign, and this is something that's been bugging me for years, is the A6M upgrade path. Before, it had this weird situation, and I never understood it. No one could really explain it to me, where the A6M2 roof, which is the float plane, which you can get in April of 42, upgrades straight into the A6M5 and skips the 3 and the 3A. It makes no sense to me why that was ever a thing, and it allowed people to exploit the game and get, through research and development, the A6M5 in around June of 42, which is pretty devastating, I think, to the Allied player, because this thing is pretty good, and when you compare it to its Navy rival that it's going to face for the rest of 42, it's substantially better. It climbs faster, it's more maneuverable. It doesn't have armor, but big deal. It's just better than that Wildcat in almost every single way, to include high altitude performance. So this thing could womp all over the Allied frontline naval fighter all the way until 1943. And I didn't like how you got it. I don't know why the float plane fighter was the way to upgrade to this. Additionally, the other problem with that was that the A6M2, which is the zero you start with, the only way to upgrade this was to go to the Senbaku, which is a fighter bomber. So this factory cannot upgrade to the M3, the M3A, the M5 without damaging and destroying it, and you have to rebuild it, which costs you 30,000 supply or more, depending on how big the factory is. And it takes time. Why would the A6M2 not upgrade to the 3, the 3A, the 5, etc., etc.? I fixed that in this version of the of scenario 1.5. So now there's a logical progression for the zero from the start to the end, and there's no weird detours with the float plane going to M5. You got to research the 3, the 3A, and the 5 to get the 5. It's only going to add a few months of research time, quite honestly, and it allows you to upgrade these factories with no penalty and no damage taken when you do it. Why that wasn't always the way it should have been, I don't get it, but I fixed that now. The other thing that is different about this campaign of playing are the stacking limits. So stacking limits have always been in the game, but it's not a default option for most of the land combat. You typically see stacking limits out in the Pacific or on small islands. For example, Wake Island, right? Atoll has a stacking limit of 6,000, meaning the total number of devices of equipment and troops can't exceed 6,000 units, whatever that is. When you exceed the stacking limit, and it's per side, you start taking supply consumption penalties, combat penalties, all kinds of penalties to your ground combat units or land combat units if you exceed that. So a lot of people actually play with stacking limits all over the map, and it completely changes the ground combat because you can't now just bludgeon your way through hexes. You have to like maneuver and go around things because, for example, like this version that I'm playing with him, there's stacking limits on every hex. So going up the Sion Road, for example, right? I can only get 40,000 units of stacking in here. So that's a combination of the equipment, the artillery, the actual squads, the AV producing stuff, tanks. They have a stacking cost. So you can see that here when you click on a unit. It's a stacking cost, right? It takes into consideration, and I don't know how they do the math on this. There's a load cost and a stacking cost. I don't understand the math, but it calculates that this unit costs you 6,090 stacking cost in the hex that it's at. So you can see here, you can't get a lot of AV into these hexes, right? But the same is true for the Defender. But if you're on parity with the Defender with AV, because you cannot physically put more troops in their hex without taking a penalty, it makes it a lot harder to advance on the attack, theoretically. Now, it makes it better for the Defender, theoretically. So I've never played this way, and I'm a little apprehensive about it, but I want to try something new. My friend Desert Wolf, who's 1,000 times better at this game than me, only plays with stacking limits. That's it. That's all he does. He loves it, and he's very effective with it. So maybe I can be too. I feel like it's going to slow me down in China a lot in 1942, but it will also help me in 1943 and on, because I will eventually be on the defense, and I can make the Allies have to find a way to bring enough stacking or enough AV into a hex to take me out of there, but they have a stacking limit too. So it's going to be fun. I'll probably be talking about it a lot as the campaign progresses, because it's going to be a big consideration for how I execute ground combat. And to do that, you actually, to set the stacking limits and all the parameters of a hex, you use a hex editor that's available. And I have actually done that in this campaign. I've actually fixed the road system here on Luzon because it was all messed up. And I wanted it to match the actual road configuration that the map shows. So I've gone in there and edited the hexes to do that. I did not change anything else in the map. I did not mess with the stacking limits that were already set by somebody else. I also fixed this hex here, Kalau. This thing drove me nuts. In the stock scenarios, for whatever reason, whoever made the hex file for 26B coded this hex, this base in the Dutch East Indies, as not able to be amphibiously assaulted, which means the only way to really take this base is to do a paradrop on it. And that's not convenient because Japanese paratroopers are needed other places, and I'm not going to waste time for a dot base. But the problem here is that the Allies can get really sneaky, and they can put float planes on this base and put AVs and stuff in here, and they can keep you spotted, and a lot of Japanese players cannot figure out why they're constantly spotted. Like, where is it coming from? I've taken all the bases. Where's it coming from? And a lot of times they'll hide them in Kalau because they know that there's an error in the hex that you can't invade it. The only way to take it out is by paradrop, and that's not really an option a lot of times for the Japanese. So I fixed that in this one. And if you want these files, I'll be happy to send it to you because this drove me nuts. The only hex I know of in the Dutch East Indies that you cannot land an amphibious assault on. It's a bug. Anyway, I think I've been talking long enough. Thank you guys for your attention on this. I'm really excited about this campaign. I do think I'm going to do well initially because I just have more experience in Italian, but I've always said that anybody can play the Allies. You can have the worst 1942 ever as the Allies, and you can still win in the late game. Japan, if you have a bad 42, you're done for. So I'm going to play Japan, and I'm going to do my best with it. I think Italian's going to do okay. He's very tenacious, and he's always learning, and he's trying to do good, but he doesn't know what I know. And I think we're going to have a pretty effective 1942. Now, one thing that he and I did agree on here, and I think it's good for everybody, is that we are going to play past the auto victory, assuming I even get it. I may not. But if I do get it, I'm not going to just quit. I think that's one of the reasons I lost Macho was he knew that there was no hope, right? He's like, why am I going to play just so you can win in 43 and then that's the end of it? He didn't see any way forward, and I was very clear that I wasn't going to play past it, and that drove him away. I don't want to drive my player away, my opponent. So if I get the AV in 43, I'm going to take my win. I'm going to put it on my stats as a win, but we're going to keep playing, and whatever happens, happens. Because I think YouTube deserves to see what this game looks like in 1943, 44, 45. I don't know that it's ever really been put on there. You guys have seen a lot of 42 because that's all I can ever seem to do. But I want to keep playing through that. So I think that's what we're going to do. I did tell Italian he needs to be have perseverance because I'm probably going to do pretty good against him, and I'm gonna hurt him. I said, listen, that's standard. It's normal. You're allies. You're supposed to get beat up for half of 42. So don't quit and don't give up on me if you're not winning, or if I got like a 6-to-1 point ratio. That doesn't mean anything because we're going to keep playing past it. Because I want him to stick around, and I want to show you guys what this game looks like in the late war. And I think this is going to be the campaign that's going to do it. So thank you so much for watching this. If you have any questions about this campaign, my opponent, stacking limits, hex editing, scenario 1.5, post a comment in the video the video here, or come over to my Discord and let's talk about it. I've already sent these files to him. We're ready to get started, and I hope to have turn 1 to you guys here in the next couple days. Until then, I'll catch you on the next one.